Listen up, aspiring lawyers and attorneys. You're in the right place. Welcome to So You Want to Be a Lawyer with James Fox. All rise. The Supreme Court is now in session. The Honorable, well, maybe, Attorney James Fox is on the mic.
Welcome to episode 3. That's applying to law school. Today we're going to talk about what steps do you take to apply to the law school itself. And so we're going to talk about, we're going to assume that you've got your undergraduate education working where along, that you have taken your LSAT and you know what that score is. So we're going to try to figure out now, what do you do at this point? What happens? Well, you've got to decide. The next episode is going to be about how to choose your law school. But when you're applying to law school, you've got to figure out a couple of things. What is it that you really want to do? There's some people that they go into it and they want to do mergers and acquisitions. They want to work in corporate law. They've got that idea. There's others that want to be, trial lawyers and work as a prosecutor or as an FBI agent or anything of that nature that you can think about. So there's no special law school for any one area of practice. There are schools that have different programs. If you want to be an environmental lawyer, the Vermont Law School's got a great environmental program. But they don't have any specialty. It's not like you're going to graduate and they're going to deem you to be an environmental lawyer. They just have different areas of study. So, for instance, if you want to be, for undergraduate, if you want to be in business administration or accounting, maybe you want to go to San Diego State. But if you want to be into biology or you want to in a science major, maybe there's a different institution. So they have different programs. But when you graduate from law school, there's no designation of that. So you pick your law school where you want to go. But now what do? There's a process involved. Now, when I was applying to law school, a whole different ballgame. You had to write out each individual personalized statement to the individual law schools, and they taught you how to find out if there's a professor there that has a certain area of interest. So you can say, well, I learned about, Professor Evan Lee's interest in criminal justice reform, I was duly impressed, and that's made me decide that I want to go to UC Hastings. That doesn't happen anymore. Law School Admissions Council, the lsac.org, where you've applied to take your LSAT and you've taken your LSAT and that's where you got your score from, they accumulate all of this data. They get your transcripts. They get your letters of recommendation. It all funnels into them. You can put your personal statement in there. You're good. You're ready to go. And you simply apply to the law schools. Now, what schools do you apply to? Let me tell you what I would do, okay? Because, yes, everybody wants to think, I went to Harvard, Stanford, or Yale. That's great. If you've got a 4.0 in intellectual property, something or another, or math, or we've all seen Legally Blonde, where she has a 4.0 in fashion design from CULA. Yeah, you can still apply, but just understand that these schools, which is what we call the Holy Trinity, right? The Harvard, Yale, Stanford, but they select very few people of the overall people that apply. So, just know that that's the case. They all have parameters on where you're going, what kind of LSAT they expect. You can find out all that information. That's all out on the web. So you can find out what their 25th percentile is, what their 75th percentile is, and what shot you've got. Hey, you've got a 175 LSAT with a 4.0 in biology from whatever school. Hey, you went Harvard, Yale, Stanford? Apply. That still doesn't mean you're going to get in. I'm sure there's people that have gotten 175s, 180s on their LSAT that don't get into Harvard, Yale, Stanford because they look at a whole bunch of different things. However, what I've advised people to do is this. Pick out a couple of schools that we consider to be safe schools, 2 or 3 of them, that if you've got a heartbeat with your scores, you're going to get into these schools. Okay? So that way at least I'm going somewhere. Now, there's also a couple, 3 of those schools that you consider to be what we would call reach schools. Schools that if you got into, you'd go, holy crap, I actually got into this school, right? I did that very same thing. So you never know. They could look at something, you become a very attractive candidate for whatever they're looking for. Great. And if you get in, bourbon, that's great. As long as that's where you want to go. So I always tell people 2 or 3 safe schools, 2 or 3 reach schools, and then 4 or 5 in the middle. Now, those are schools that your scores fit within the parameters of what they accept and what they're shooting for, and that you think you've got a good shot at getting into. These are schools that you wouldn't be, how should we say this? Because you shouldn't be ashamed of anything when you're applying to this. This is law school, for God's sakes, right? So if people say, well, you didn't get into the best law school, but I got into law school, okay? So, bite me. So sorry for the gruff voice this morning. I don't know what's going on. So hopefully by the end of this, it'll have worn off and I'll have my regular voice back. But those are the schools that if you got into, you'd feel okay going to your family and saying, hey, guess what? I got into such and such, right? They might be second tiers. Now, law schools do things as they do with everything else. They grade everything. They have first tier law schools, second tier, third tier, fourth tier. You can find all this out from U.S. News and World Report. It seems to be the quasi-Bible for different things. It gives you a lot of information. They have one version of it that comes out. I don't know when it comes out throughout the year, but you can always order it. And they will tell you what the best graduate schools. They'll have law schools, med schools, and it's all in sort of one volume. And you'll be able to tell what the percentiles are of what the schools accept. So you've got 2 or 3 safe schools, 2 or 3 reach schools, 4 or 5 in the middle. Now, it costs to do this. If you are somebody that does not have the resources in order to do this, there's a lot of fee waivers. You can apply for a fee waiver as far as applying for the application. Now, understand, a lot of these law schools make a lot of money just from applications. A lot of them to go, oh, nope, right? They still keep those $60 or $80 just for them looking at it and going, well, your scores don't count. We're not going to accept you. You're done. They don't even read your stuff sometimes, but they still make their $80. So they make a lot of money on it. And so they encourage you, well, yes, you got a 151 LSAT, and, you never know. You could get into Harvard. Maybe so, because you've got that 4.0 from fashion design or, from CULA. Yeah. And if any of you were thinking about Legally Blonde and whether or not you can do a video essay, yeah, you're not going to be doing a video essay. And very few schools that I even know of. I don't know of any anymore that do interviews like they do for med school. But so just know that doesn't happen. So your personal statement is really, really important. We're going to talk about that in a second. So those are the schools that you want to apply to. If you can get a fee waiver, get a fee waiver, because it can get expensive. I mean, if you've got 2 or 3 safe, 2 or 3 as far as reach, let's say that's 6 schools, 5 more in the middle, that's 11 schools. Well, it's $60 a pop. And I think that's on the cheap end. It's between 60 and 80, but let's say $80. Let's say $100. That's a bunch of money. I mean, you're talking about $1,100, somewhere between $800 and $1,100 to apply to 11 different schools. I mean, that's not insignificant. So those are the things you have to factor in. Now, your personal statement. This is probably one of the more important documents other than your GPA and your grades. Because if you're one of those people that you're sitting on the fence, they're going, yeah, the scores are okay. We would like to admit them. Who are they? When you're writing your personal statement, this should be, and I'm not even remotely kidding here, this should be the most tightly written, expressive document you've ever written in your life up until this point. Unless you've written sort of a biography of yourself and had it published. But this should be very tight. You've got a very short period of time within this document to catch somebody's attention. When I talk to students about their personal statement, this is how I describe it. When you're going through a bookstore and you want to buy a book, right? Not a Kindle or not an electronic book, but an actual book with paper. One of the things you do is you look on the back page to find out, 1, what have other people said about the book, and 2, what's a brief description of the book. You don't want the book to say, from the author, a note from the author, I've always wanted to write a book. It's been my dream to write a book, and now I've realized that dream, and I can't wait until you read my book because it's one of the better books. It's the book that I've written, I've wanted to write all my life. that's boring. And you wouldn't buy the damn book because you want to find out more about the book than you do about whether the author really wanted to write a book. We assume he wanted to write a book. Because why? Because he wrote one or she wrote one. Okay, so your personal statement's got to be the same way. Don't start it off with, this is just my opinion, right? You can do it however you want to do it. But I wouldn't start it off with, I've wanted to be a lawyer my whole life. This has been a dream of mine for so long, and I can't wait to fulfill my dream of becoming a lawyer at your prestigious law school. Boring, right? Remember, they only have a brief period of time in order to read these things. And you don't want to muck it up with all of your aspirations of how much you want to be a lawyer. They figure you want to be a lawyer because you're applying to law school. So you got to start it off with a little bit of a punch, okay? So one of the things that I've always recommended for people to do is to start it off with a certain line. Here's an example. A young lady started off her personal statement with, I've broken the mold. Ooh, okay. What does that mean? I've broken the mold for myself and my entire family. My actions have helped my family understand who I am as a person. Well, that makes you want to read a little bit more. What did she do? Right? What is it that she did that broke this mold? What mold is she talking about? And she went on to talk about how she's a Hispanic woman in what we call a traditional Mexican family, and that within that confine, it is a matter of you don't leave home until you're pregnant and married, or at least married. And here she was in an undergraduate institution, and her father came to her and handed her a couple of cable bills and said, hey, you're supposed to pay these. And she went, whoa, they're your bills. Yeah, but you live here now and you're over 18, so it's your responsibility as a family member to pay these. And she went, no, because he wasn't even asking. He was demanding, you're going to pay these. And she said, no, I'm not. And he got very upset with her. So what she did is she said, well, if I'm going to have bills like this, I might as well move out. Well, that was unheard of. And what did she do? As a 19-year-old sophomore in college, she moved out. And they were shocked. And her extended family was shocked. And there was whispers going around that she must be pregnant, because no self-respecting person of their culture would ever move out of their parents' household until there was another man that could take care of her. But she moved out, and she struggled, and she bought used furniture and the like, and so be it. Well, what that did is it sent her father a message that I don't have to conform to your archaic ways. Now, I say archaic. That's only because she said it was archaic, right? If that's people's culture and that's what they want to do and that's the choices they make, so be it. But that's their choice, is what her point was. So, and what it did is it sent a message to her mother, even, that, wait a minute, she's surviving. She's not hurting. She's actually thriving. Well, gee, maybe we've got it wrong. Maybe the way that we've approached things isn't really the way that it is. It sent her younger sister a message that said, you don't have to conform. And it sent her brother a message that said, guess what, boss? Just because you're a male, you don't get to think that way. So she ended up changing her major from biology to women's studies because of this dynamic process. But that was an interesting story, right? It gave us some insight onto who that person was and why that person would be a benefit or I don't know, I'm losing my word here, but an enhancement to our law school. And so that woman was accepted, and it made us want to read her personal statement. It made her more interesting. It made her more dynamic. It made her like, okay, here's a person that if they get a law degree is going to do something really good with it. So that's the kind of thing you need to start off with. And it takes at least dozens of drafts. Every single word that you put in your personal statement should mean something. Every paragraph should be tightly written and have a theme. And make sure you have everybody that you can read it. and the people that you love the most that can speak truth to power, have them read it every time you write it and find out, hey, do you understand? What did you get from that? Don't tell them what it means. Ask them in paragraph 1, what did you get from this? What did it mean to you? Right? So you want it to be that way. You want it to be something that's enticing, something that's going to explain who you are and why you're going to be a benefit to their law school, and why their law school is going to provide you with an education that when you use it is going to be a positive reflection upon their law school. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be devoid of passion. When I say don't start it off with, I've wanted to be a lawyer as long as I remember, I still communicate that passion, but do it in a way that entices them, that makes you a good candidate for their school. Now, once you have all that done and you have all those applications in, know that this is probably one of the more stressful times you're going to have. Your applications are all in. Some schools you may have applied early decision, which means, that you want to know before Christmas. Now, a lot of times when you apply what they call ED, and ED has a whole different framework these days, but it means early decision in this context. You have to, if they say, okay, that they want a commitment, if they give you a yes on an early decision, they want you to say yes and then stop all other communication with different law schools. So only apply early decision to those law schools that if they say yes, you're ready to jump at it and say, I'm on board. And that truly means, now I will tell you, it doesn't mean you're contractually obligated, but not a good way to start off your legal career if you make a promise and then can't keep it by saying, oh yeah, well, thanks for the early decision. I'll keep that in my back pocket until I hear from X, Y, or Z. So only apply those schools with early decision of the ones you're ready to say yes to. Now, with that being said, the deadline, there's certain deadlines they have that they won't accept applications after, and it's usually February, Marchish. Get your applications in early, right? Get them in the fall. When I applied to law school, it was October 1st. By October 1st, I had all of my packages ready. They were all in this big list of things, and I literally waited until, if I would have, I don't think I stayed up till midnight on October 1st, but it was certainly first thing in the morning that I went to the post office and I put them all in there. I made them all return receipt requested, so I knew when the law school got it and somebody signed for it, because I didn't want them coming back on me and saying, we never got it. So I got all these receipts, so I knew they had it. And then I waited and I waited and I waited, and it's an interminable wait. But as soon as you get your first acceptance, I mean, I know I cried. I just like, wow, I'm actually going to get to do this, right? That whole dream that I've been talking about, I'm actually going to get to do this. Somebody said yes. That's craziness. And then other yeses started coming into play. So just know that the process is fairly simple. It is time intensive, but that's how you apply to law school. Okay, so get your applications in early. Pick out your schools based upon your numbers. The one thing we didn't discuss, and I'm going to discuss it just briefly here for 30 seconds, is if you have not gotten your LSAT score back because you've taken it in October and you're not going to get it till November, but you want to get your applications in early, you should have, based upon your practice tests and based upon what you have done with a preparatory course, you kind of have an idea of where you're at. So I might put in 3 or 4 applications of what I consider to be middle schools, the middle tier of those schools and such, and then sort of wait on the rest to find out where you're at, because you might surprise yourself and get a greater LSAT score than you thought, which you're not going to be hurt by those middle tier schools, but it might give you a chance at some other schools on the upper tier if you want to. So that's what it is about applying to law school. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me. You can reach me at my office at 888-301-2455, or you can send me an email at jamesfox@foxlegalgroup.com. But the next time we meet in episode 4, we're going to talk about what happens when you actually get your acceptance letters and how you're going to prepare for the upcoming season of law school. All right. So thank you for listening, and we will talk to you soon. You have a nice day.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of So You Want to Be a Lawyer with James Fox. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on So You Want to Be a Lawyer.